look increasingly likely that we're going to get impacted by a winter storm, but it's not going to be one of those all snow events. It is going to be just a messy storm overall. We're going to see a mix of rain, freezing rain, sleet, and snowfall. So in the end, we're going to see all kinds of precipitation.
Now, is that going to affect all of East Tennessee, or is there maybe a part of what our coverage area, if you will, that's going to see snow, maybe some less, maybe some more?
Yeah, so I think the greatest impact from maybe snow and ice could end up being across the northern plateau into southeast Kentucky. Now, the best opportunity to potentially see some actually heavy rainfall is going to be across the southern valley and closer to the mountains as well. So, location is really going to be dependent on just how much of what kind of precipitation you see, but I do expect fairly widespread that we started some snow and sleet, transitioning to freezing rain, and then transitioning to rainfall. So, there is really all kinds of precipitation in this forecast. But obviously, the forecast can be pretty challenging as we get further and further away from the event. So let me just give you a quick rundown as to winter forecast, because I know that there has just been a lot of misinformation out there, and there have just been so many raw model data outputs that have been shared. And a lot of times that just causes fear and anxiety, but also confusion. That's why we've been really specific about our communication for this event. And that's why we have been talking about our theme for winter weather forecasting. It is a long event to get the forecast together. So we're initially 7 to 10 days out looking for pattern recognition. Then about 5 to 7 days out, we're looking at the trends overall. We're not just taking one specific model output and then locking onto that solution. That's why you're not going to see us post snowfall totals 5 days out with high confidence. It's just impossible, because the models are changing. They run several times each day, and at 5 to 7 days out, you're looking at high or less, greater resolution models. You want some of those high resolution models that are a shorter time frame, but give you a better picture of the details of the storm. So 3 to 5 days out, that's where we have the better chance of the type of snow or sleet or ice that we're going to see. And then really at this point, we're looking at the detail stand. So narrowing down amounts and locations. But this one, we're going to see all kinds of precipitation. So there's still going to be the impact on the roads, even if you're not necessarily seeing the most amount of snow.
And this is what you also said during Good Morning Tennessee, where it's important that when it comes to these apps where there's not, it's not super hyper local as ours is, what you see on the Storm Team 6 weather app, that's your forecast. And that's why it's super important to take a look at that, because you're the one that's, fine combing that, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And there a lot of those numbers that are just being put out on generic models, or even just some of the raw data that's just been spread across social media, there's just not that human input to it. There's a lot more than just a specific number. I mean, we're having to look at the different layers of the atmosphere. So when I go to school visits, we talk to the kids about, we're looking at the temperature at the surface, but also looking at the temperature up closer to where airplanes fly. That whole column of the atmosphere, if it is warmer, that's going to completely change your forecast, and that's going to be the theme. We could have some freezing rain. It could be 32 degrees on your thermometer at your house this weekend, but you're seeing rain. But that is ice forming, because that's going to freeze on contact. So that's why it's been such a challenging forecast, and that's maybe why we have been not able to give you the answers that you've been looking for necessarily, but we're not going to put out information that we're not confident in. We want to give you the best forecast possible, and it just takes time to get to that point. And that's what we're still working on at this hour, but it does look increasingly likely that we are going to have a storm roll into the area that's currently centered near the coast of California. So it's still over 2,000 miles away. As you can imagine, there can still be some changes with a storm that is still over a day away and 2,000 miles away from our location. But it looks increasingly likely that we are going to have a wintry mix rolling through the area, and there will still be some travel impact. We're just going to see all modes of precipitation, and it's going to be a long duration event. This rolls in on Saturday, but doesn't exit until Sunday. So we're going to see changing types of precipitation as the system rolls into the area. This is also just going to be a huge storm. It is going to impact a huge part of the country, stretching from really the Arizona, the higher mountains there, all the way up into New York State, where winter storm watches are already posted in this area. So there is going to be a huge impact from this storm system in the form of snowfall, ice, freezing rain, and even just plain old rain. You can see those watches that are already been posted, issued by the National Weather Service, encompassing a lot of the country. Track number 1 is the most likely one at this point. That comes pretty close to us. So what that means is less snowfall, more of a messy mix. I've watched over the last 48 hours the models take the heaviest axis of snowfall completely out of our area and push it well to the northwest. That's why we're not releasing our idea for snowfall totals 4 to 5 days out, because changes are inevitable as you get closer to the event. So this is going to be a messy storm stand. We're going to see all kinds of precipitation, and that's still going to lead to some impacts, though. The If you were looking for snowfall, track number 2 is the better one. You need that storm to be a little bit further south, but over 2,000 miles at this point from, again, Arizona to New York of winter storm watches. So this is going to be a beast of a storm, but impacts will be localized, including here in East Tennessee, where we are expecting a wintry mix to roll through. So impact starts on Saturday, and I think it's going to be that time frame Saturday afternoon into really early on Sunday, through at least sunrise on Sunday. That's going to be when I think we see the slickest travel conditions and likely the greatest impact from this event in the form of ice forming on the roadways. So we're pretty confident that we're going to see all types of precipitation, the confidence in the arrival time as well. It is trending a little bit later on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning may end up being an okay day if you do have to maybe do some last minute preps in the morning. Not necessarily the greatest travel impact, but I am expecting road conditions to deteriorate through the afternoon and into Saturday night. So there's still going to be the impact. We'll see a brief window of snow at the onset. I think that's the greatest opportunity for snow to accumulate, especially north of Knoxville. But in the end, Stan, when people are going to look back at this event, they're just going to remember a mess of a storm. It's not going to be a snowstorm.
And we were talking about this morning when it kind of happens on Saturday. Maybe it'll go on for a few hours, but then maybe it'll go to rain, freezing rain. You kind of have like a little bit of change there, but then it's just a matter of maybe the wind or the temperatures that drops things, and like that ice just may stay there if that comes to be.
Yeah, what we're hoping for is we're going to see a changeover to rain, and that should allow for improvement on the roadways into the day on Sunday. And some of that rainfall could be locally heavy, but it's really just going to be dependent on the temperature profile, not just here at the surface, but also in the higher levels of the atmosphere. So as you can imagine, this is a complicated forecast. This is a dynamic storm system, and it's still going to bring impact to our area. So again, different kinds of precipitation. Stan loves this graphic. Different types of precipitation. We're seeing freezing rain, so think of that as like the glaze on a donut. That is the snowflakes falling through a warm layer, but then freezing on contact. So there's a good chance if this weekend, if you're seeing rain on Saturday and into Sunday morning, just assume it's freezing rain, because it is going to be very cold. That rain could freeze on contact, and that's when you start to get ice to develop. If we see high ice totals, that would also increase the risk for some power outages. I don't think that's the highest threat right now, but it's still something we're watching, because if we do have people losing power, just know it is going to be extremely cold early next week, talking about single-digit morning lows by Tuesday. Sleet is still going to lead to slick travel, but that lowers the threat for power outages. That's more like the sprinkles on the donut. That'll be ice pellets falling to the ground. And then snow would be powdered donuts. But I'm expecting more glazed donuts, more sprinkled donuts compared to powdered donuts.
I think there's a lot of people out there that might be upset that we don't get the powdered donuts.
Yes.
Compared to the other
Yes.
ones.
Listen, I'm right there with you. I do love powdered donuts and some snowfall, but this looks more so that it's going to end up being a brief window for snow, a icy mess, and then some heavy rain as well. There's a ton of moisture with this storm system. So as the moisture does fall, it could come down pretty quickly. I think we could see some high rainfall rates in the end. So low temperatures on Saturday morning will be in the teens and 20s. So we're starting out pretty chilly on Saturday morning. So a really cold start, but the timing with the initial burst of potentially snowfall has delayed a little bit. So notice mid-morning road temperatures are hovering around the freezing mark along and north of I-40, but we're in the 20s in southeast Kentucky. I think it's southeast Kentucky that locally sees the highest snowfall totals. Now, you may see some snow accumulation, but we will see those road impacts also go down for the Southern Valley, because you're going to see sleet and freezing rain as well, which could lead to slick travel conditions as we head through the day on Saturday. So at the onset of the storm, we're going to see a quick burst of snowfall. Central Valley points northward. Best chance for sleet and freezing rain. I'm expecting a quick changeover will be in the Southern Valley. For snowfall initially, favoring those along the Tennessee-Kentucky state line where temperatures are going to be colder, also have the colder road temperatures as well. But still, even if you're not necessarily seeing snow, the threat will be there for some slick travel conditions. Something that we'll be watching is closer to the mountains in places like Townsend, Gatlinburg, Newport, we may see a faster changeover to rain. That's something that we'll be watching. It's something I've seen before. If you remember the Martin Luther King Jr. Day storm back in January of 2024, there was a lot of snow in the valley, but in Gatlinburg, it rained. Warmer air may come down from the mountains, so you may see warmer temperatures through this event Saturday night into Sunday, and you may see, in the end, more rain than anything else. It's something that we'll be watching. It's something that we've seen before as some gusty winds blow down from the mountains. And you can see that reflected in the temperatures. I mean, 39 for a high in Gatlinburg. That's going to lead to some rain.
And real quick, going back to the road conditions real quick, it's important to know as on our side of things too, we want everybody to be aware that the major highways are the ones that get covered with the salt and the brine, but they're not necessarily going right into your neighborhood where it could be right in front of your house. You still have to be careful if you do choose to go outside. You're not recommended to go out unless you have to, but for just the travel purposes, that it's very important just to keep that in mind where the major highways are the ones that are covered. Not everywhere is going to be covered. And especially to the hospitals, maybe emergency services, that's where you're going to find the direct route, more or less. But it's still not optimal to travel in those conditions.
Yeah, and all the salt, the brine, that'll be key, especially when we have the threat for some freezing rain. But then the idea is as the warmer air continues to move in, we could see some of the rain naturally wash some of that ice away as temperatures continue to warm up. But for Saturday highs, notice our colder spots, again, along the Tennessee-Kentucky state line where we could see some snowfall initially and then seeing that change to a freezing rain or mix. We're in the mid-30s for highs for the Central and Southern Valley, but you can already see that theme setting up with upper 30s, Tellico Plains, Gatlinburg, Newport. You may start as sleet or freezing rain and then transition to all rain. It's something that we'll be watching, and it's something that we've seen before with these type of storm systems. So it is still going to be pretty chilly on Saturday. It looks like a messy day overall with different kinds of precipitation depending on your location and depending on the temperature profile from the ground to the higher levels. So look what's going to happen as well. So I mentioned we could see a brief burst of snow to the north, but road temperatures are going to warm up. We may actually start to see some melting into the afternoon on Saturday. Now the question is, who stays the coldest? Who stays below freezing? That's what we're watching, because as the warmer air moves in aloft, road temperatures for some will be below freezing. That's your threat for freezing rain, and that is going to result in really difficult travel conditions. And if the ice stacks up enough, we could have some isolated spots that lose power. So that's something we'll be watching. The winds don't look overly strong, so that should help lower the threat for power outages. But if we start to see high ice accretion in parts of the area, that threat for power outages is going to go up. Regardless, it still looks like we're going to have some slick travel. I think the worst travel conditions will be Saturday afternoon into Saturday night, lingering through sunrise on Sunday. I think that's when we're going to have some of the slickest roads, because notice how road temperatures are going to fall into Saturday night as well. So we'll have a mix of rain, sleet, freezing rain, leading to glazes, or if not more, of ice on the roadways. So slick travel Saturday afternoon into Saturday night, but then that warmer air really starts to surge in Saturday night into Sunday. So we're going to start to see those road temperatures warm up, and that's when rain is going to start to fall, and that's what I also could think help melt away some of the ice that may form Saturday afternoon into Saturday night. So again, it is a dynamic storm system. So Saturday evening into the overnight, best chance for snow to sleet to freezing rain. That winter combo will be north of Knoxville, where we could have some slick travel lingering into the overnight hours. For the Southern Valley, we're still seeing some freezing rain, but then an eventual transition to a chilly but all rain. And I think that transition is going to happen fastest, closest to the mountains, and also through the Southern Valley. So we're also going to see that line continue to lift northward into Sunday morning. So for Sunday morning, I think a lot of us are waking up to a chilly rain with some mix. Yes, there may be a spot of some freezing rain or some sleet. I think that potential is highest again along the Tennessee-Kentucky state line, where temperatures should be a little bit cooler, but a lot of us are going to be hovering right around that freezing mark Saturday night into Sunday. So we'll be watching those temperatures really closely in the morning. Still expecting some slick travel if you do have to get out the door early on Sunday. But then we're going to see a heavy rain for most of the area through late morning into the afternoon, and then potentially ending as a brief wintry mix. Mainly, though, I think that chance is highest across the Tennessee-Kentucky state line and in the mountains as well. Now, much colder air is going to move in Sunday night. So it does look like a flash freeze is possible if there's still standing water. And I do think there's that potential because, again, some of this rainfall is going to be really heavy, could stack up. So there may be some slick spots Sunday night into Monday. That's another time frame we'll be watching for some slick travel conditions. So I don't think it's necessarily widespread. It is going to be really dependent on just how much rain falls and how much is still around. But we do have the potential for black ice Sunday night into Monday morning. So, Stan, that could obviously slow things down a little bit on Monday morning.
For sure. And then just kind of keep in mind if you do end up going back out on the road, as we've been talking about, not every place is going to get covered. But if you do want to, keep yourself prepared, there are plenty of ways that you can, just keep your car ready. Like, you hear the kitty litter having that handy just to get the traction and kind of just get yourself going whenever you're out and about. Maybe you have some jumper cables with you. You should have those anyway. But just things of that nature, because you don't want to be stranded, especially if you slide off the ice. Make sure your phone's fully charged. Have a car charger in your car. Have plenty of water too if you have that. It's just those little things that add up to something very important if that's just something that you need to be doing when this winter storm comes in.
Yeah, I would definitely be prepared for icy roads and also the threat for power outages. Because if we're over prepared, then we're ready to go for the storm system and then hoping for that rain to melt away some of the ice during the day on Sunday. So this is the timeline to break it down. So since we've shifted back the arrival of the storm, so in the morning, travel impacts look pretty low. Most are going to be dry to start the day. Then closer to midday, we'll start to see some snowfall roll into the region. Now in the afternoon, that's when the wintry mix opportunity starts to increase. So that'll be from south to north lifting in. So we're going to see a change to sleet and freezing rain and potentially all rain eventually later in the afternoon, especially across the Southern Valley and then closer to the mountains. Overnight, that freezing rain threat will continue as temperatures hover right around the freezing mark. So that's when we're starting to get some of those higher travel impacts. That continues into Sunday morning, but then that warmer air starts to win out. So we're going to see a cold rain late Sunday morning into the afternoon. So that also will start to decrease travel impact, but any standing water overnight into Monday morning has a good opportunity of freezing as that colder air does rush in. So this weekend is still a high impact event. It's a changing forecast, really changing types of precipitation. So we are going to start as some snowfall, transitioning to sleet and freezing rain, and then transitioning to all rain. So the threat is still there for icy roads, especially Saturday afternoon into Saturday night. I really think that Saturday afternoon through at least sunrise on Sunday morning. Slick travel expected for most of the area. Also, depending on just how much ice does form, the threat will be there for some power outages as well. So that's what we'll be watching. And then next week is just cold. On Monday morning, we're waking up to the teens. By Monday afternoon, we're only in the upper 20s. Tuesday morning, we're waking up to the single digits. While we are not going to see the biggest snowpack here in East Tennessee, it's just going to be to our northwest, and that cold air is going to spill over. So Tuesday morning is very cold. The record in Knoxville is 2 degrees. So you get the idea. Near record cold on Tuesday morning, and then highs will struggle to get above the freezing mark. So this is a dynamic storm system. We are narrowing down the details as it gets closer, but right now it looks like this weekend we have an impactful winter system. It's not going to be the perfect snowfall for pictures or anything like that. Nope. It is just going to be a very messy storm with all types of precipitation, rain, sleet, freezing rain, and snowfall.
Yeah, it's but we'll be here. The whole Storm Team 6 weather team will be here covering everything really from now until until it's over, until it's past, because you guys are practically going to be living here, and then everybody on the news side of things will be here keeping you up to date on things that might be happening in and around the city from the impact of the weather as well. But yeah, this is something that you guys have been taking a close look at for a little over a week now, I want to say.
Yes, so we still have another day. More data will come in. Some of that high-resolution data comes in. So, of course, we'll be narrowing down the details, but it still looks like the greatest travel impact is Saturday afternoon through sunrise on Sunday. Then we see a cold rain. We may even have a spot of flooding or two just because there's so much moisture in the atmosphere. But then any standing water is going to refreeze. So this is going to be an impactful storm system with changing types of precipitation. But It's East Tennessee. We don't
Yeah.
do just simple forecasting or simple storms. We have active forecasts and weather.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll definitely have more on this at 6 News at midday. That's coming up in a little over 30 minutes too. So you're going to break it down once again, and we're just going to talk about everything to keep you guys in the know. We're on your side with everything that is going to happen and what to be on the lookout for.
Yes, so we'll leave it there. Stay safe this weekend. And of course, we always have the latest information at WATE.